Amara Vance uncovered a secret. Rowan Kade tried to run from it. Callan Vance killed to protect it. Lorelei Finn lied to survive it. And Briar Holt cleaned up the mess. At Everwind Country Club, beneath the polished smiles and glittering galas, murder became just another game for the powerful, until Detective Silas Moor exposed them all. Nestled deep in the lush countryside of Willowmere, Everwind Country Club stood like a polished jewel, hidden behind iron gates and endless rows of manicured gardens. It was a place only the elite could touch, a world of champagne brunches, white linen tournaments, and glittering summer galas where every guest was someone important. On the evening of July 16th, the club buzzed with excitement. The annual Midsummer Gala was the highlight of the season, drawing in every notable name from miles around. Strings of fairy lights twinkled in the warm night air, and the soft hum of laughter and music floated over the greens. Amara Vance was a sight to behold that night. Known for her beauty, wealth, and sharp tongue, she arrived draped in an emerald silk gown that caught the light with every step she took. Her diamond bracelet, a piece gifted to her by her husband Callan Vance, sparkled like frost on her wrist. Guests whispered admiringly as she made her way through the crowds, offering polite smiles and icy nods to friends and rivals alike. No, one knew that it would be the last time they would see her alive. As the night unfolded, the champagne flowed freely and laughter grew louder. By midnight, the celebrations reached their peak with fireworks that lit up the velvet sky. Couples danced barefoot on the grass, children played hide-and-seek among the hedges, and no one noticed when Amara slipped away from the main event. It wasn't until the early hours of the morning, as the last guests began to trickle out and the staff started tidying up, that someone found her. It was one of the cleaning crew, a teenager named Lyle, who stumbled upon the body. He had gone to collect empty glasses from the pool area and saw something floating at the far end, motionless. At first, he thought it was a prank. Someone had thrown a mannequin into the water. But as he got closer, the truth hit him like a cold wave. It was Amara Vance, her once flawless gown billowing around her like a shroud. Her eyes were open but empty, staring up at nothing. Her bracelet was gone, her shoes missing, and her car keys, which she always kept tucked in her small clutch, were nowhere to be found. Panic erupted across Everwind. The police were called immediately, and by sunrise, yellow tape cordoned off the glittering paradise. Detective Silas Moor arrived just as the first birds began to sing. With his heavy boots crunching over the dewy grass, he surveyed the scene carefully. Silas was not easily rattled. He had seen plenty of crime scenes over his 20-year career. But something about this death unsettled him. There were no broken glasses around the pool, no overturned chairs, no blood, and not a single sign of a struggle. Whoever had done this either planned it perfectly, or Amara had trusted her killer. The interviews began at once. Guests were tired, disoriented, and drunk from the long night of celebration. Most of them had little to offer. They had seen Amara, early in the evening, laughing and sipping champagne, but no one could say when she had disappeared. Some claimed they heard a splash around midnight, but they assumed it was someone fooling around. A few others whispered about a heated argument she had earlier with her husband, but when pressed for details, they grew suddenly silent. Security footage was the next logical step. The club's security cameras, usually strict and thorough, should have captured every movement around the pool. But when the footage was reviewed, Silas found something strange. The cameras pointed at the pool area had stopped recording precisely at 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before midnight, due to what the technician claimed was a system error. No backup footage existed. It was as if the night had swallowed Amara whole. Silas walked the perimeter of the pool slowly, noting every detail. A champagne glass rested untouched on a side table. A gold heel, matching Amara's missing shoes, lay abandoned near a hedge. Someone had been with her. Someone who left in a hurry. The detective knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just a tragic accident at a party. This was murder, deliberate and chilling. And somewhere among the guests who danced and drank under the stars, a killer moved quietly, blending in, waiting for the storm that was about to come. Detective Silas Moor wasted no time in digging into Amara Vance's life. In a place like Everwind Country Club, appearances were everything, and secrets were hidden behind polished smiles and perfect lawns. Silas knew better than anyone that the richest people often had the darkest skeletons. The first place he started was the Vance estate, a sprawling mansion that sat just beyond the club's boundaries, surrounded by iron gates and manicured gardens. Kade Vance, Amara's husband, greeted Silas with an icy calmness that felt more like performance than grief. Colin claimed he had nothing to hide. He told Silas that he and Amara had a normal marriage, filled with the usual ups and downs of any busy couple. But it didn't take long for Silas to learn that the Vances were far from perfect. Friends close to the couple revealed that their relationship was strained. Amara had grown distant in recent months, often disappearing for hours and refusing to explain where she had been. There were quiet rumors of affairs, of heated arguments behind closed doors, and of threats made during late-night phone calls that only the thinnest walls could contain. One name kept coming up in hushed conversations: Rowan Kade. Rowan was a young, athletic tennis coach who worked at the country club. He was handsome, charming, and popular among both the women and the men. Some whispered that Amara had been spending too much time with him under the excuse of private lessons. Others suggested that what began as harmless flirting had turned into something deeper, something dangerous. Silas decided to track down Rowan. When he found him at the tennis courts, Rowan was sweating heavily, practicing furiously, almost as if trying to escape something in his mind. When questioned, Rowan was nervous, his answers too rehearsed. He admitted he had taught Amara tennis, but denied anything more. He claimed he hadn't even seen her during the gala, that he had been busy helping to set up for a tournament the next day. Yet when Silas checked the event roster, there was no tournament scheduled until the following weekend. While Silas turned his attention to Rowan, another lead surfaced. During a routine sweep of the club's staff lockers, a security officer found something that sent chills through the investigation. Inside a battered locker belonging to Lorelei Finn, a bartender who worked the gala, they found Amara's missing diamond bracelet. It was tucked deep in the corner under a pile of old uniforms, wrapped in a stained napkin. Lorelei was brought in immediately for questioning. Lorelei was young, sharp-eyed, and fiercely defensive. She swore she had nothing to do with Amara's death. She said she had worked the bar all night and barely left her station except for quick breaks. No one saw her near the pool. No one saw her leave the gala with anything suspicious. She insisted someone must have planted the bracelet in her locker to frame her. The possibility wasn't impossible. Staff lockers were poorly secured, and during a party as large as the gala, hundreds of people had wandered the hallways. But if Lorelei was telling the truth, someone had gone to great lengths to shift suspicion onto her. Adding to the mystery, Silas uncovered another troubling fact. When the club's security logs were reviewed, it was revealed that an access code had been used to disable the cameras around the pool. The code belonged to Briar Holt, the club's maintenance man. Briar was quiet, almost invisible to most members, but his job gave him full access to every corner of Everwind. Briar insisted he had nothing to do with the cameras failing. He claimed his login details had been stolen or hacked, but Silas wasn't so sure. Accidents rarely happened at the country club without someone allowing them. The final piece of the puzzle that day came from an unexpected source. While searching the outer edges of the club's property, Briar himself found Amara's car abandoned far away from the usual parking lot, hidden behind an old, crumbling barn surrounded by thick woods. The keys were still missing. Inside the car, Silas found Amara's purse, emptied of everything valuable. It was a chilling discovery. Whoever killed Amara had tried to make her death look like something else. An accident, a robbery, anything. But the murder it truly was. By the end of the day, Silas was drowning in suspects. A jealous husband, a secret lover, a nervous bartender, and a maintenance worker who knew too much. Each one had a motive. Each one had an opportunity. But only one of them had blood on their hands. And somewhere within the shimmering walls of Everwind, that killer was still hiding, waiting for their lies to hold under the weight of truth. The investigation into Amara Vance's death had barely begun when Everwind Country Club was rocked by a second tragedy. It happened just 3 days after the gala, on a humid afternoon that seemed to smother the town of Willowmere in a blanket of heat and tension. Rowan Kade, the club's popular tennis coach and one of Silas Moor's main suspects, was found dead inside the squash court. His body was discovered by a maintenance worker who had come to check on the renovation equipment, left there for the upcoming remodeling project. Rowan lay crumpled under a pile of heavy, metal scaffolding that had collapsed from the ceiling above. At first glance, it looked like a freak accident. Construction workers had been setting up the court for days, and it wasn't unusual for equipment to shift. But Silas, now fully immersed in the darkness surrounding the club, wasn't convinced. Something about the scene didn't add up. The scaffolding beams weren't simply loose or old. They had been sawed almost clean through, the cuts hidden just enough to hold temporarily before failing under weight. The medical examiner's report confirmed what Silas feared. Rowan hadn't died immediately. He had struggled for a few minutes, trapped and helpless, before succumbing to his injuries. It was a slow, brutal way to die, and it told Silas one thing. This was murder, just like Amara's death. Only this time, the killer had used patience and planning instead of brute force. It was clear now that someone wasn't just cleaning up loose ends, they were erasing them entirely. Word of Rowan's death spread through Willowmere like wildfire. Members of the club whispered fearfully behind closed doors. Some canceled their memberships. Others packed their bags and left town altogether. The police presence at Everwind doubled. No one could deny it anymore. There was a killer among them, and no one knew who would be next. As Silas dug deeper into Rowan's background, he uncovered a troubling discovery. Bank records showed that Rowan had recently received a large deposit into his account, a sum far greater than what a tennis coach at a country club should have been earning. The money had come from an anonymous source through a complicated trail of shell companies, but Silas suspected that it was a payoff. Rowan had known something dangerous, something that someone had paid him to keep quiet about. But silence hadn't bought him safety. Rowan's personal life revealed even more cracks. He was drowning in debt, owing money to local bookies and private lenders. He had a history of bad decisions and worse company. Still, Rowan had been preparing to leave Willowmere behind. Travel brochures and job applications for out-of-state clubs were found in his small apartment. He had been planning to escape. Maybe he had realized too late that no amount of money was worth what he knew. Meanwhile, Lorelei Finn, the bartender whose locker had held Amara's bracelet, remained under heavy suspicion. She claimed to have no connection to Rowan's death, but Silas noticed the way she flinched whenever Rowan's name was mentioned. She was hiding something, but whether it was fear or guilt, Silas couldn't yet tell. The only person who seemed unaffected by the growing chaos was Briar Holt, the maintenance man who had found Amara's abandoned car, and who now busied himself with quiet repairs around the club. Briar kept to himself, blending into the background like part of the furniture. But Silas knew better than to trust someone simply because they seemed invisible. In his experience, the most dangerous people were often the ones no one noticed. The pieces of the puzzle were there, but they didn't fit yet. 2 deaths, both staged to look like accidents. Missing security footage. A hidden influx of cash. Secrets thicker than the country club's velvet drapes. Silas felt the pressure mounting. Whoever had orchestrated these murders wasn't sloppy or impulsive. They were patient, calculating, and willing to kill again to protect whatever they were hiding. As he stood alone in the darkened squash court, the scent of sawdust and old sweat filling the air, Silas realized that Everwind was much more than just a playground for the rich. It was a battlefield, and the war for control had already claimed 2 lives. He also knew, with grim certainty, that the killer was not finished yet. With Rowan Kade's death confirming the presence of a killer, Detective Silas Moor turned his attention to the undercurrents flowing just beneath Everwind's polished surface. It was clear that these murders were not random, not crimes of passion or accidents. They were calculated, precise, and tied to a secret buried deep within the walls of the country club. Silas knew the answer was close. He could almost feel it. But each lead seemed to open more questions than it answered. The first break came when forensic analysts completed a sweep of Amara's abandoned car. Hidden under the passenger seat, tucked so far back it almost escaped detection, they found a slim flash drive. It was scratched and dirty, as if someone had tried to destroy it. But when the tech team recovered the data, what they uncovered changed everything. The flash drive contained dozens of documents, bank statements, email threads, and photos. It revealed a network of illegal activity running through Everwind's elite. Money laundering, real estate fraud, insider trading. The very people who hosted charity events and smiled for society page photographers were deeply involved in organized crime. Amara Vance hadn't just stumbled across this information, she had been collecting it. For months, maybe longer, she had been quietly gathering evidence, storing it piece by piece, likely planning to use it for leverage or protection. Or perhaps she had grown tired of the lies and wanted to expose them. Now, Amara was dead. Rowan, who may have known about her investigation, was silenced before he could speak. It was becoming clearer that the murders were part of a much larger operation, a desperate effort to protect the people who had everything to lose. Silas narrowed his focus to a core group: Callan Vance, Briar Holt, Lorelei Finn, and a name that had surfaced from the flash drive data, Soren Maddox, the club's financial manager. Soren was a man rarely seen at social events, preferring to operate from behind his polished mahogany desk. He managed the club's vast finances with surgical precision, and according to the drive, he was the architect behind many of the shady dealings. Silas decided it was time to confront Soren directly. But when he arrived at Soren's home, a sleek modern house on the edge of town, he found it empty. Soren had vanished without a trace. No note, no packed bags, no signs of struggle. It was as if he had simply dissolved into the air. His bank accounts had been drained overnight, his office at the club meticulously cleared out. It was too clean, too fast. Soren hadn't just fled. He had been prepared to run for a long time. The disappearance only heightened the atmosphere of fear and suspicion at Everwind. Members whispered in tight circles, wary of one another. The staff moved stiffly, their laughter forced, their glances nervous. Everyone seemed to be waiting for the next blow to fall. One evening, while reviewing the flash drive again, Silas noticed something he had overlooked: a series of photographs dated only a week before Amara's death. They showed a meeting in the club's private dining room. Seated around the table were Callan Vance, Soren Maddox, Briar Holt, and surprisingly, Lorelei Finn. They weren't drinking or laughing. They were discussing something serious, their faces tense and grim. Silas realized with a sinking feeling that Lorelei had lied about her role. She hadn't been just a bartender caught in a web, she had been part of it. Whether by coercion, ambition, or fear, she was involved far deeper than she admitted. Now, with Soren missing and Briar keeping, his head down, Silas had 2 names at the top of his list: Callan Vance, who had the most to lose if his wife exposed their crimes, and Lorelei Finn, who had betrayed Amara in ways yet unknown. As he pieced together the final moves of the night Amara died, a picture began to form, one of a trap carefully set with Amara unknowingly walking straight into it. Her bracelet planted, her car hidden, the security cameras sabotaged. The chaos had been orchestrated down to the last detail, but Silas knew the truth was even more dangerous than he had imagined. If he wasn't careful, he could become the next target. In Everwind, loyalty meant nothing, and betrayal was just another transaction. As the walls of lies and money closed in around him, Silas prepared for the final confrontation, knowing that the killer was closer than ever, and willing to kill again. Detective Silas Moor knew the final move was his to make. The killer had taken careful steps, covering their tracks with precision, eliminating anyone who posed a threat. But the pressure of keeping such deadly secrets always left cracks behind, and Silas was determined to pry them open. He set a quiet trap, using the one piece of bait he knew the murderer couldn't resist, the belief that they had gotten away with it. Silas organized a private meeting at Everwind's grand ballroom, the very place where the fatal gala had taken place. He sent formal invitations to Vance, Lorelei Finn, and Briar Holt under the guise of a memorial announcement for Amara. He wanted all of them in the same room, under the same roof where the lies had begun. As expected, curiosity and fear brought them. The ballroom was cold and hollow that evening. The chandeliers, once glittering with laughter and champagne, now hung like frozen witnesses to the crimes. Silas stood at the head of the room, watching as the suspects filed in. Their faces betrayed their nerves. Lorelei shifted uncomfortably, clutching her purse tight. Briar kept his head low, avoiding eye contact. Callan moved with an air of forced control, but Silas saw the stiffness in his shoulders, the barely hidden rage simmering underneath. As the room settled, Silas dropped his final card. In front of them, he projected the recovered photos from the flash drive, the secret meeting captured forever in digital memory. The reactions were instant. Lorelei gasped, Briar's eyes widened in panic, and Callan's face hardened into a mask of fury. Before anyone could speak, Silas revealed more. He spoke calmly, outlining the chain of events. Amara's discovery of the crimes, the clandestine meeting to silence her, the planting of evidence to frame Lorelei, and Rowan's murder. To prevent the truth from surfacing, every step laid bare in front of the killers who thought they had buried the past deep enough. The breaking point came when Silas accused Callan directly. It wasn't just anger or fear that flashed across Callan's face. It was guilt. Callan lunged forward, but Silas was ready. Officers hidden in the wings moved in and restrained him. In the struggle, something slipped from Callan's jacket, a small, black key fob. Silas recognized it immediately. It was the device used to disable the security system the night Amara died. Forensic analysis later confirmed Callan's fingerprints all over it. The final piece of evidence had fallen into his hands by Callan's own arrogance. Under interrogation, Callan's story unraveled. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the betrayal of his co-conspirators, he confessed. Amara had threatened to go public. She had confronted Callan on the night of the gala, demanding he confess or she would. In a blind rage, fueled by fear of losing his fortune and reputation, Callan had struck her by the poolside. When he realized she wasn't just injured but dead, he panicked. With Briar's help, he staged the scene to make it look accidental. They planted the bracelet in Lorelei's locker to create a convenient scapegoat, and later, when Rowan hinted he might expose everything, they arranged his death as well. Lorelei's role had been smaller, but no less damning. Out of fear and a desperate need for money, she had helped Callan keep the cover-up intact. She had hidden evidence, lied to investigators, and even considered fleeing town before the flash drive surfaced. Briar, loyal and silent until the end, admitted to disabling the security cameras and helping move Amara's car. His reward had been a promise of financial security, a promise that had crumbled the moment Callan's empire began to collapse. The arrests sent shockwaves through Willowmere. Everwind Country Club, once a symbol of wealth and prestige, became a cautionary tale of greed, betrayal, and murder. Memberships were canceled, lawsuits flooded the courts, and the club's grand gates eventually closed for good. Silas Moor stood outside those gates on the day they were sealed, feeling the weight of the case finally lift from his shoulders. Justice had been served, but the cost had been high. 2 lives lost, countless others destroyed. The dark heart of Everwind had been exposed, and nothing in Willowmere would ever be the same again. As Silas turned away, he couldn't help but wonder how many more secrets still lay buried just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to rise.